There we go. Oh.
Okay, Madam President, I think we are on time, so let us move on.
Yes. Okay, wait. Okay, thank you, everyone. So at this point, may I call on Reverend Paul Shu to open this forum with a prayer.
Thank you. Let us pray. Lord God, we thank you that we are able to gather today for the APAMEI International Forum. We thank you, Lord, that we are able to gather together all around Asia and indeed from all around the world every month to discuss important issues for education in Asia. Today, we are discussing the LGBTQ issue, and we ask that you would give us hearts to discern and minds to understand others. This is a very important issue in society and schools. And we thank you, Lord, for the presenters who have worked hard to prepare for today. And I ask, Lord, that you would give the Holy Spirit to those of us who are listening and participating, that we may gain better understanding of this world, better understanding of others in society, and also better understanding of our role and our participation as a part of that. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lord, for being with us today and for this opportunity to join our minds and our hearts together for this research and international forum. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Paul. At the outset, allow me to thank the Community Chest Foundation, the Union Theological Seminary, the Department of Education for joining forces with us for this morning, afternoon, evening's event. So let me turn the floor to the Director of Regional Hub Philippines and also APAMEI board member to introduce our first speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce to you our first resource person for today's webinar. Binibining Neris Karen K. Kakay Pamaran serves as the Executive Assistant to the President and the Director for Communications of Union Theological Seminary Philippines. She is also convener of the seminary's Center for Gender and Sexuality and is adjunct faculty in New Testament studies. Binibining Neris Karen K. Pamaran has a degree in psychology from Silliman University, a Master of Divinity and Master of Theology in New Testament criticism and historical Jesus research from Union Theological Seminary Philippines. She serves as lecturer and resource speaker for various programs of the National Council of Churches in the Philippines, the Council for World Mission, the World Communion of Reformed Churches, and the World Council of Churches. She's also part of the curriculum writing team of the Council for World Missions Theological Education for an Economy of Life. Kakay was a former pastor of the Metropolitan Community Church, Quezon City, and is a member of the Global Interfaith Network for people of all sexualities, sexual orientations, gender identity, and expressions. Ma'am Kakay.
Thank you, Dean Connie. Thank you, everyone. I am glad to be here. Thank you to APAMEI, and apologies for just including just APAMEI on my slide. APAMEI, YAM School, and the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry of the United Methodist Church. I am truly grateful for this opportunity. Now, allow me to quickly share my screen. Okay, is that okay for everyone? Yes, I assume so. Okay, so I was asked by my dean to speak on LGBT and human rights in the context of the Philippines. And I got a glimpse of my co-speakers' slides earlier when we were testing the tech. So I think some of the things that we are going to talk about will kind of like overlap. So I will quickly go through my slides. So we will have more time later on to have discussion. Storytelling is much, much more important, I think, where this is concerned. So let me just begin quickly. The Philippines is second in rank in the 2013 research on openness and acceptance to LGBTQIA persons. We are actually only second to Australia. So our global statistics actually say that, according to the Pew Research Forum, Philippines is second in the world in acceptance and tolerance of LGBT persons. We are also the 7th country out of 144 in the world, according to the 2016 World Economic Forum study, of the countries with the lowest gender gap. For instance, by gender gap, I mean, well, you know what a gender gap is, but women appear to be having, you know, gender is not an issue in access to services and all that, and leadership in the Philippines, which is probably one of the reasons why this statistics came about. We've elected like 2 women presidents in the past and all that. We are very used to leadership of women in the Philippines. So that's a feat, right? We are ranked 2nd in the acceptance and 7th out of 144 countries in the world in terms of the lowest gender gap. Now, that is true. That is a yes. But, you know, it is a common opening. Yes, but is a common opening to rights conversations in the Philippines. We are, in fact, a country whose history of feudalism and colonialism seeps through our contemporary experience. We are still a semi-feudal, semi-colonial country. And it becomes very difficult, in fact, to unearth many realities that can be reflected in our statistics and how we project ourselves to the world. For instance, patronage politics in the Philippines is alive and well. In fact, it has become more blatantly public and normalized of late, right? So we are very used to yes, but. Yes, you have rights, but, you know, that is a common opening. And I will be talking about labor, education, media, legislation, and religion in this conversation really quickly to give time to my my companion, who will be speaking probably of the same thing. So the statistics that we have is very layered. And my yes, but actually wants to say that the LGBT communities in the Philippines is understood to be a sector of society. We have LGBT persons across all social strata. And I want to center my input today on economics and labor. Just because to give you a clearer picture of how LGBT persons in the Philippines are, you know, regarded and how they present themselves in society, and how they appear statistically, at least. And I am sure this is also true in your contexts. Let me tell you about my friend Claire. Claire, according to Claire said that labor issues of the workforce are issues of LGBT people. The sooner we recognize that, the sooner we can provide responses to the needs of members of our community who need proper attention. That's her in the left and the right side of the slide, and the picture on the left is just a picture I put there so I can prove to you that she's really my friend. So Claire is a labor leader. She is a factory worker that I met in a picket line in when they were protesting for just wages and just compensation in a liquor company of all places in somewhere in Laguna. So when I was a student in seminary, I had met her there, and we have talked about many things. And Claire is a transgender woman. She's also the leader of their union in that liquor company. And her labor, the labor issues around that was that she was hired as she was contracted through a third party corporation for employment in that company. And on the papers, her legal papers in the labor department, she was a maintenance personnel, someone who's supposed to do maintenance work like cleaning and utilities. But in reality, her actual work in the factory was a quality control analyst. So that's to talk about human LGBT rights in the Philippines is to talk about all intersectional conversations covering the umbrella term human rights. The Philippines has a 6.9 unemployment rate according to the Philippine Statistics Authority. That is the most current data that we have. We are there are only 6.9% in our population that are unemployed. Sounds good, right? I mean, that's awesome. Wonderful. But here is the reality about that employment. The minimum daily wage in the National Capital Region, where me and Ma'am Connie are, and some of our colleagues who are in this call with us, is 537 pesos per day. You can do the conversions later, but it is one of the highest minimum daily wages in the Philippines, in the National Capital Region, which probably explains why National Capital Region is such a populated area. We are currently at 11 million in the National Capital Region alone. So because one of the reasons for that is that here in this region, the national wage, the minimum wage is higher. The minimum daily wage in our own region, Region 4A, is 356 pesos. And I say non-agri because that's kind of like, if it's non-agriculture, agricultural work is lower, a lot lower. And the lowest minimum daily wage in the Philippines is 310 pesos a day. Just to put it in perspective, if you smoke, a pack of cigarettes in the Philippines costs about 150 pesos. So, that's probably their way to stop from smoking, but that's how it is. No, we are at a 6.9 unemployment rate, but our employment looks like this. 75% of Filipinos' minimum wage is spent on basic food products. 75% of Filipinos' minimum wage is spent on basic food products. As of January 2020, the average cost of food items is at if you go to the grocery and you buy these basic necessities for a month, it will cost you around 447 pesos. Ma'am Connie is nodding because she spends that for a week, I think. She spends more. But 447 pesos is what a normal family, like an average grocery trip to the grocery would cost, right? So the Philippines is actually placed 52 out of 54 countries where in a study in terms of wages that can afford the minimum comfort of living. Now, 500 something pesos means that this is 75% of your income will go to basic food products. Obviously, there are other basic needs besides food, and we know that. There's education, there's healthcare, utilities, there's rent, transportation, clothing, and etc. So the living daily wage is actually pegged at 1,065 pesos or 25,000 pesos a month. This is what a family of five needs to, the breadwinner of a family of five needs to earn in the National Capital Region to be able to afford comfortable life. This is the calculation for this, you know. Right now, the minimum wage, right now where we are and where we are at our wage levels, the minimum wage breadwinners need to earn at least 528 pesos more a day so they can afford a decent life. Now, the new taxation schemes, the rising costs of living, and COVID, our situation is not really in a good place. And therefore, 11% of our population work overseas. The Philippines has one of the largest diaspora populations in the world. As much as 6,000 people leave the country per day to go and work elsewhere. And because of that, because of so many other things, our education is also not performing very well. Last year, 22.7 million students enrolled in the public school systems. The teaching positions were not filled up to the target. And the shift to the K-12 system has been a challenging process, as you probably know as educators. You know that K-12 system has been a challenging process. And the system appears to promise to make a new generation, more employable. As educators, you know this dovetails into that fact that our minimum daily wage earners cannot earn enough, and so they leave the country, and therefore our educational system follows suit to make our generation more employable. And so we have adjusted our educational system to make younger persons more employable at an earlier time. Of course, you can argue with me on that, but that is not the point of this conversation. It just says that much of our economic struggles are bleed into how we perform our the performance of the state to influence public life. Now, in our educational system, of course, on top of the K-12 struggle and shift and that reality that is shared by everyone, all our school children, that our public school system is having a hard time. We do not have data on our private school systems. I'm not sure if they're doing better, but in as far as I know, and I hope my co-speaker will talk about that later, generally speaking, we have not done well, I think, in the educational system. And to add to that is the layered struggle of LGBTQI school children and teens. Because this is a common experience across the board for all our school children and all people who are in the educational system. But when you are LGBTQIA, you get bullied in school. And that is, you know, a statistical fact. And during the time of online learning, they are stuck in homes where they are unsafe. Perhaps at the onset, I will want to talk about me. I came out when I was 17. I came out as lesbian when I was 17. And for many reasons, because I attended college in another city, my struggle to find myself became more helpful to the process when I was outside of my home, because I come from a very conservative Christian home. Okay. I'm not going to say the name of my church, but I do come from a very, very conservative Christian background. And so it was difficult for me to come out in that home space, just because, and so I tried to find myself, and I tried to be more, how do I say, intentional in trying to look for myself. I found comfort in anonymity, in fact, of the school space. So for many LGBT kids and teens, leaving their houses and going to their school is a cocoon that allows them to explore and allows them to be more intentional in trying to understand themselves. Now, in the era of COVID, they are stuck in their houses because they cannot go to school. And most of their houses are actually unsafe. And in the media, in the 70s, I remember watching movies of Dolphy and all that. So the gay, effeminate drag queens of the 70s were a popular projection and portrayal in the media. And it has become better, a little better in the year 2021, certainly. But much of the way LGBT persons are portrayed in media also reflect how people deal with LGBT persons in their lives, as well as how LGBT children and people look at themselves. So I posted questions here, and you don't have to answer them, but it's probably good to ask yourselves, how are LGBTQI persons portrayed in movies, telenovelas, dramas, etc., in our everyday lives? How do these portrayals affect the way we perceive LGBTQIA people? We are mostly dealt with portrayals that seem to, LGBT people are funny, they are comedians, they make people laugh, they wear ridiculous costumes, they are the sidekick of every, and all that. So media portrayal of LGBTQI persons are also, they have an effect in how people, the public, perceive us or perceive the sector. There is no national law against discrimination of LGBTQIA persons in the Philippines. In fact, there are only, in fact, it is a 21-year-old campaign to push for a national anti-discrimination law. Right now, it's called the SOGI bill. We have several senators of several renditions of the bill trying to get through the third reading, but we have never been successful in pushing for a national law to criminalize discrimination of LGBT persons. But we do have 15 cities, 1 municipality, 3 barangays, and 5 provinces who have some semblance of anti-discrimination ordinances in their areas. And in the map here, this is the map of the Philippines. Those areas where they're highlighted blue, colored blue, are the only places where there is some form of anti-discrimination ordinance or executive orders in place. Again, the anti-discrimination bill in the Philippines has been filed and refiled in both houses. since the year 2000, and it has not yet been. Someone is raising their hand. Did you want to engage, or can you just wait? I'm about to finish my slides and we can talk later. This is how, I wish I had more pictures, but this pretty much sums up how we are as a people with regard to how we, my yes, but proposition earlier. And these are people who are obviously against LGBT persons, and usually they are from conservative churches. And I'm sure you have your versions of that in your own contexts. This is, sorry. Okay, 20 minutes. Yes, I'm about to finish. And this is a picture of our national treasure, Manny Pacquiao. He is a boxing champion. He is also a pastor, and right now he's running for president. So once upon a time, about a couple of years ago, he said something about the LGBT people being in Tagalog, it's mas masahol pa sa hayop. You are like animals, right? And so that created a backlash, and then he took it back and apologized. And he said, I am sorry for hurting people by comparing homosexuals to animals. Please forgive me for those I have hurt. I still stand on my belief that I'm against same-sex marriage because of what the Bible says, but I'm not condemning LGBT people. I love you with the love of the Lord. God bless you, and I'm praying for you. That is exactly what I mean when I say yes, but. Right now, the society and almost all our communities are still struggling with this concept that LGBT persons are created in the image and likeness of God. In fact, for those institutions which are more advanced in terms of understanding LGBT issues, this is still the level where they are at. It feels like for many and all attempts, we are still separate entities trying to decide if LGBT people are humans, right? Because we are still talking about, yeah, but you are created in the image and likeness of God and all that. And the conversation is there still at that point, and therefore it is still yes, but yes, you are created in the image and likeness of God, but, so that is that pretty much appeals to what it mirrors, in fact, how we process these things as a collective, right? In different levels. For most institutions that have begun speaking of LGBTQIA issues, and I understand this is a particular issue in the United Methodist Church right now. This is quite a struggle. So it's exhausting and exhaustive. The conversation has been like that. And so that is the reality of many of our institutions. The UMC certainly is not alone in this. Many institutions and in fact, the Philippines is also struggling with that question. It is, and the answer has been yes, you are human, and yes, you have rights, but.
Wow.
Therefore, LGBTQIA persons still largely rely on their own grit and creativity to thrive as individuals. There are no national legislations in place. There are no laws to protect, particular laws to protect LGBTQI persons. Most LGBT persons just still rely on their close-knit communities and the people who love them so that they can thrive as individuals. That is the layered marginalization and the layered reality of LGBT persons in the Philippines. We are still, the efforts to uplift the rights of LGBTQI persons still remain at the individual, very, very scattered and sporadic and uncoordinated efforts. We are still at the private sector level. Some industries, for instance, the BPO industry, each company has their own like LGBT inclusive policies as private companies. Schools sometimes have initiatives in attempting to protect the rights of LGBTQI persons, and it's very self-directed. They do their own research, they do their own efforts, and all that in the attempts to make their institutions more inclusive. Case in point, the Union Theological Seminary, for example, is we have policies in place to protect the rights of LGBTQI persons in our institution. There is a declaration, a non-discrimination declaration in our revised curriculum, but it's still largely an individual and separate and uncoordinated effort. We are also still at the LGU or the barangay level, the smallest unit of governance. Even advocates of government have to rely on the laws and ordinances that they can scavenge from and that they can apply. Legislation, as I said, at the national level is a 21-year-old attempt. It's a 21-year-old campaign. Christian churches and their national leaderships are still unable to get a good footing on their positions in the Philippines. In the Philippines, there's only the IFI and the UCCP among the mainline denominations with very clear legislations and very clear statements in their general assemblies. So all in all, the rights of LGBT persons in the Philippines is, yes, you have rights, but that is where we are at right now. And until we are able to be more clear and intentional in understanding what these rights are and allowing LGBTQI persons to live life of abundance and fullness, we may not be able to really grasp and be full in our understanding of human rights in LGBT persons.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pamaran, for that very on-the-level, straightforward yet incisive presentation. So from one prolific speaker, let's move on to another one. An educator, an author, creator, innovator, researcher, and most of all, a game changer and transformational leader in human formation and community development. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to present to you Mr. Rafael Cabilio Brillo. Rafi?
Hi, hello. I think I would say good day to everyone, wherever you are in the world. Okay. So I am actually glad and honored to be invited in this forum. And I was invited actually through Community Chest Foundation by Dr. Ann. Thank you, Mama. And then, so today, sort of somehow related to the topic that's been discussed by the first speaker, but I will try to focus on the history, how the LGBT community or the fluidity of gender and sexuality in the Philippines has been transpired from the very beginning, how it was formed during the prehistoric period until the present. Okay, so I will be opening my slides, and here we go.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I hope everything is fine, everything is sound okay, everything is healthy and well. My name is Rafael and I am from the Philippines. Early this month, I was asked to share my ideas regarding gender and sexuality in the Philippine context. And I am honored to be here and thank you very much for inviting me. I am
Hello.
humbled for that. Okay, so before we are going to start our discussion, first of all, I would like to inform everybody that I maybe utter or say words that somehow you consider it odd, uncommon, and not usually be heard on our daily activities. Some may find it illicit. However,
Hmm?
I really need to convey the message. So I really need to utter these words in order for us to have that somehow grasping and better understand the gender and sexuality in the Philippine context and how it is being transpired. And this is about educational purposes, nothing less, nothing more. So please do not take it personally. In addition to that, please, if you have questions regarding the presentations or if you have questions in the middle of the presentations, please park your questions and you can raise your questions later part after our discussion. So I hope everything is clear and thank you. And before we move forward to the core topic of our discussion today, I just want to point out some important terms regarding gender and sexuality. And this is through the genderbread person. Maybe some of you actually have the idea or already have the understanding regarding these terms, but please let me refresh your thoughts and mind. Is that okay? Thank you. Okay, so the first term that we need to emphasize or point out here is about gender identity. So gender identity, this is actually how we identify ourselves. Maybe this identification to some people, only them who knew what could be their gender identity. Some has been divulged to closest friends, some just within the family, and some has been broadcasted to everybody. So the best representation of gender identity, if you are going to look at this picture, a man is actually in front of the mirror, and what he sees is a woman. So it means that in this picture, the man actually identify himself as a woman. But there are people as well. They have these difficulties of identifying themselves. Somehow they cannot place themselves as a man. Sometimes they cannot place themselves as a woman. So we call them as genderqueer. Okay, so the next term that we need to point out here is sexual orientation. So sexual orientation is about the attraction to another person. This is pertaining to sexual attraction. So if you are sexually attracted to opposite sex, it means that you are heterosexual. If you're attracted to the same sex, it means that you are actually homosexual. Both sexes, it means you are bisexual. And the picture actually implies on what I was explaining. Okay, so the next term is biological sex. It means that it is part of our body and we are born with it. So if you are a male, you have a distinctive reproductive system compared to female. So male reproductive system, to name a few, composed of testis, penis, you must have a prostate gland, just to name a few. If you're a woman, so it means that you have uterus, you have fallopian tube, you have vagina. So those reproductive system actually distinctively separate women or male from female. But there are other people who are actually born with combination of these two reproductive systems, and we call them intersex. Okay, so the next term that I need to emphasize today is gender expression. So it means that this is actually how you express yourself, and this can be seen by other people. So this can be through our appearance or the way how we dress, the way how we behave, and the way how we act in front of other people. I just want to emphasize as well here that there are some people that they are actually born with biologically male, but then when they express themselves, they are feminine. But it does not equate to the idea that person is a gay. So we have to be very careful when labeling or judging people according to their expression, because somehow you're actually violating the rights. So wait until that person confirm to you what could be his or her gender identity. That is the time that you can tell that that person is straight, that person is gay, that person is lesbian, or to name a few. So those are the terms that I really need to emphasize before we proceed to the core discussion or presentation that we have today. I tried to squeeze everything into a 20-minute talk, but then I will try my best to do that. And maybe I only have 15 minutes left. Okay. This is now the gender and sexuality in the Philippine context. Okay, I actually divided this topic into four parts: pre-colonization, during colonization, post-colonization, and of course, the present. So that we can have that full grasp of understanding of gender and sexuality, how it is being transpired in the Philippines, we really need to backtrack the history so that we can have the full understanding of the present. So, during pre-colonization, fluidity of gender and sexuality existed in the Philippines. It means that gender was not conforming with sexuality. So, for example, biologically you are born as male. You do not have to act like a man that we define man today. Okay, so I hope you mind. So it's not conforming with sexuality. And Filipinos during this time can actually change sexual preferences over time and in different situations with no judgment or no label at all. And they may shift back and forth along with sexuality spectrum throughout their lives. What was the role of the women during the pre-colonial period? Women actually enjoyed similar status as men. It means that women at that time can kick ass. They were actually priestesses. They were actually matriarchs. They can divorce their husband anytime they want. And they can head or lead a village. They can be next in line to an heir of a certain position in the society. They can accumulate wealth. They can acquire wealth. They can be a warrior. They can be a ruler. And during this time, if you are going to disrespect women, it has a negative connotation to you directly within the society. So you will be, labeled negatively in the society. So because of the status of women, similar to men, cross-gender and transvestism were actually, cultural by that time. It was exemplified by the people called Babaylan. Babaylan is a Tagalog term, means shamans. They were actually focusing on spiritual functionary within the ethnic group or the society. And usually they were female. Why? Because femininity during that time was considered as the vehicle to the spirit world. So if you are a man and then you want to practice being a shaman, you have to dress like a woman and you need to pretend that you are a woman so that the spirit would listen to your prayers. And different studies has been conducted. Historian has been consulted as well. There were male shamans. Male shamans that considered as femme. They were married to men and had sexual relationships at that time. The shamans or babalans were accepted and revered in the society. Why? Because they were very influential. They were the ones who were actually being called first if there was conflict or issues within the tribe or within the ethnic group, they will perform rituals or say prayers to resolve or fix the issues. Most people look up to them because of their knowledge and wisdom, because they listen to community deeply, led through a deep understanding of their interconnectedness of all life forms of their surroundings or within their environment. This kind of fluidity of gender and sexuality actually disturbed when the Spanish arrived to the Philippines. So this is during colonization, where male-centered Hispano-Catholic culture dominated the society. But for the information of everybody, the Philippines has been colonized by the Spaniards for more than 300 years. So, for example, if we encounter Filipinos and if they are going to ask their surnames, most probably their surname somehow sound like Spanish. Aside from religion, that is one of the biggest influences that we got from Spanish when we actually conquered or colonized Philippines. So aside from fluidity of the gender has been disturbed, education as well has been altered and was based on Catholicism, where priests stood as educators, or we could consider teachers, and they were all men. Then during this period, good education can be found in the most prestigious schools in the Philippines and prioritized to be available to all men. So what was the role of the women during this colonialization or during this colonization? Women must act like Maria Clara. Maria Clara is a Filipino word. This was actually an ideal woman dictated by the Spaniards. And then being Maria Clara means she must display innocence and submissiveness. And it symbolizes being timid, shyness, and purity, overly religious and obedient. And during this time, women were not prioritized. Why? Because women during this time believed just to stay at home, be an obedient and respectful daughter, and then respectful wife and a mother. So women being a subordinate was instilled in the mind of Filipino during the Spanish period. They were actually not allowed to participate in any political activities. So freedom of women during this time was suppressed. Why? Because Spanish actually are scared by them because they know that women in the society during the early days of the Philippines was highly respected, highly regarded, and fury. So if you are going to colonize, I'm giving you the idea, if you're going to colonize certain people, a group of people, or a place, you need to target first the most influential person on that group. Once you convey your message to that person, that influential person, the rest will follow. So in this time, what happened to the Babaylan? They disappeared. Why? Because when the Spaniard came to the Philippines for the quest of gold, God, and glory, it was the shaman or the Babaylan found actually themselves in the front line to protect their faith and religion, or what you call the God part. In order for the Spaniard to demolish these influential Babaylan or shaman in the community, they maligned and we consider falsely accused these Babaylan or shaman as witches and then priests of the devil. And in addition to that, they were actually driven to hiding, and Spaniard also destroyed their religious paraphernalia. Moreover, the priest was educator during this time, bringing the religion combined with the education. Spaniards, in the representation of the priest, actually instilled the idea that anything in between being a man and a woman was a sin. Therefore, crossing gender and transvestism during this colonial period labeled as being a coward, confused, and it's a form of weakness. So the shamans and their practices was, being slowly diluted by what they called Abrahamic religions, and resulting the disappearance of Babaylan along with crossing gender and transvestism. Those are the most important I could point out during the colonization. The role of male, the role of women, and the disappearance of crossing gender and transvestite during this time. During the post-colonization, Filipinos actually was able to regain themselves, and colonizers were no longer there. And by blood, being a Filipino, we were actually fluid when it comes to gender and sexuality. So that's why emergence of different identities and sexual orientation emerged during the post-colonization. And the term bakla, the term tomboy was developed or has emerged. When we say bakla, it means in English gay, effeminate man. Tomboy, that is what we call lesbian, so like a macho female, And LGBT community has been slowly and gradually developed. At the start, if you were gay or lesbian during that time, to come out in public was unthinkable. Why? Because of the religion and education, that anything in between being a man and a woman was sin. Still, the blood of Filipino in treating gender and sexuality was fluid. The gender was not conforming with your sexuality. Gradually, these people that they found themselves in between of being man and woman involve themselves in fashion and entertainment, okay, until they engage themselves in political activism, like forming organizations, creating organizations, advancing organizations, supporting organizations to show support or oppose certain government policies, so that the community would know that they exist, yeah, they matter, and they just want to be visible in the society. Until this time, this group of people, this community actually still striving, still fighting to be recognized legally in the Philippines. And in addition to that, okay, standardization of education has been imposed during colonization. This actually brought the awareness and consciousness of the Filipino people that men and women were not the only basis of gender and sexuality. So it slowly awakened the mind of the Filipino. And also came the recognition of women's contribution in nation building. So that's why during this time, government policies were actually developed or made mostly, inclined in recognizing women's right, because they matter in the development of the Philippines. So we could consider a milestone to the Philippines to fight for women's rights, the what we call women's suffrage plebiscite bill that was signed by the President of the Philippines year 1936. This bill was actually designed to fight women's right to vote and be voted to any political positions and offices. So nowadays there are lots of organizations, lots of movement. But then I will state some noticeable movement regarding the present situation in the Philippines. So we have Magna Carta of Women. So Magna Carta of Women is a comprehensive women's human rights that actually seeks to eliminate discrimination through recognition, protection, fulfillment, and promotion of the rights of Filipino women, especially those belong to marginalized sector of the society. This is actually a Republic Act 9710 of the Philippines that has, a framework to fight for the rights of women based on the international law. Other noticeable law is what we called Violence Act Against Women and Their Children. So This is actually pertaining to violence being inflicted by their life partner, ex-life partner. You could consider husband, ex-husbands, boyfriend, ex-boyfriends, girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, partner or ex-dating partner. Anything about violence against women is being handled by VAUSI, or Violence Act Against Women and their children. So, because of these different laws, different organization that promotes rights of women in the Philippines has gained its rank as number one in Asia and number 16 in the world in closing the gender gap. And this is according to World Economic Forum on regarding Global Gender Gap Report of 2020. And aside from that, development plan for gender and development, this is a 30-year plan of national plan. This is actually provides equality among men and women in the development of the society that includes all aspects in order for the society to grow. However, in the concept of gender, it was identified only men and women. So how about those people that actually identify themselves somehow in the middle of those gender identities? That's why there are a lot, lots of organizations, but then there is no law. Yet nationally, there are different local ordinances for certain municipality, for certain cities. Yes, they existed, but then there is no milestone or historic one to protect the rights of LGBTQIA community in the Philippines. So that's why the SOGI Equality Bill has been created. SOGI means sexual orientation, gender, identity, expression, equality bill. This bill actually already passed the Congress. Senate interpellation, or discussion we would say, in layman's term, is actually ongoing. So we do not know when this bill will be approved in the Senate, and we are actually crossing our fingers that it will be sooner than later. So Philippines still has that long way or long journey in reaching or celebrating fluid identities. And in closing gender gap, we are moving forward to the right direction, I am hoping. And hopefully that will be enjoyed by the next generation, or maybe in my time, I do not know yet. But still, we are actually fighting for the equality across the different genders and different community, like LGBTQIA+, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual, plus. And then the question is, which one of you is the alphabet person? That is, there are some people actually like when that LGBTQIA letters B stop. Okay, each letter actually something to do with community that they represent and very particular, but also comes with derogatory associations imposed by others until these others will able to land on one letter that somehow they could understand who you are, who am I, and who we are. So at this moment, what I want from everybody, wherever part of the world, please show respect. Whatever gender, women, men, LGBTQIA+++. So it means that just respect the person. And the most important is please do not discriminate. Why? Because whatever color you may be, whatever letter you may be, you are valid. You do matter. You are loved. And we are all valid because we are human beings. Thank you and have a good day. Hello, thank you very much. And that was actually my presentation when it comes to uh, gender and sexuality in the Philippine context. And I hope everybody has a grasp of understanding how it evolved the Philippine society and how we are actually today. So as what I was actually saying that LGBTQIA, unlike with women, women already has this solid platform in the society to, evolve themselves to become a leader or equally have equal rights with women. So we are actually looking into something in between. Those are the gaps that we need to, look forward. That's why the SOGI has been created, as what my co-speaker actually said earlier, that it has been filed for 21 years. Until now, it's not yet approved. So I am crossing my fingers in my time, maybe, or maybe in my succeeding generations. Hopefully, they can enjoy that bill and can be fully evolve itself to become a law, because we do not have that national protection or what you call springboard for us to maximize our potential to help the Philippines to grow better for the next generation. So thank you, and that's all for me.
Nirja, Dr. Masi?
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, we're hearing a strong echo from you.
Now, is it okay? Is it better? The echo is gone?
Yes.
Better.
So first of all, I would like to greet everyone and say thank you to our speakers. They have done a wonderful job, Madam Kekai and Mr. Rafael. And it's been really a very, very insightful, both the lectures were, both the talks. And before we enter into the QA session, I would like to invite Dr. Paul Shu, the Vice Chancellor of Ayoma Gakuen University, Japan, to hear more about the gender and sexuality from Japan's perspective.
Thank you. 5 minutes, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
5 minutes.
It's not enough time, but I'll try. I work in a large school in Japan. Ayoma Gakuen is in Tokyo. We have about 24,000 students. Most are in the university, but our school includes kindergarten, elementary, middle school, high school, women's junior college, all the way through PhD programs as well. In my position as a professor in the university, as a university chaplain, and as a dean and administrator of the school, most recently as vice chancellor, we have increasingly had to tackle the issue of LGBTQ students and faculty and staff in our school. Traditionally, the portrayal in media in Japan of LGBTQ people has not been good. It's very similar to the Philippines, hearing our speakers actually. LGBTQ people are often portrayed with stereotypes, as a caricature, or the butt of the jokes in a negative way. And Japanese society has not afforded LGBTQ people the rights that they need in society. Now, in Japan, homosexuality has never been illegal, except for a very short period from 1872 to 1880, when they were trying to adopt Western laws. Except for that very short period, there was no legal prohibition of homosexuality, and traditionally, Japanese religions of Shinto as well as Buddhism were accepting of homosexuality and those gender issues. But in the modern era, there has been consistent discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people in Japanese society. That has begun to change in most recent years. But traditionally, the LGBTQ plus people have faced discrimination in employment and in housing and those issues. LGBTQ people, especially lesbian and gay people, have never been allowed to marry. So there's no same-sex marriage in Japan. That is true until today. And that creates a lot of problems because same-sex couples then do not get the rights of married couples in terms of renting or purchasing house or financial arrangements or hospital visitations. All of these important things for living together, for having a life together, they cannot do. And so this is a very serious problem for them. In recent years, some parts of Japan have started to take a more liberal attitude towards LGBTQ people. And this has developed somewhat gradually, but the breakthrough was in 2015, only 6 years ago. Shibuya ward of Tokyo. Tokyo is divided into different wards in the city, and Shibuya, which is a big central ward, began offering same-sex couples a certificate for proof of partnership. And by the way, my school is in Shibuya. We're right in Shibuya where that is happening. And so that allowed people, same-sex couples in Shibuya, to show proof of the relationship that they could use for renting apartments, buying homes, for hospital visitations, and for other employment, important employment benefits. Since then, 100 cities and towns and other municipalities in Japan have adopted similar partnerships for LGBTQ people. So there's been a big shift. The national laws have not changed, and there's been some court cases, but the Supreme Court at the moment has continued to uphold that marriage in Japan is between a male and a woman only. But that is beginning to change. There's also a big increase in the understanding of transgender and intersex people. That was an issue that previously was completely swept under the rug, under the carpet, you could say. But in recent years, that has come out as an issue. It's been recognized, and especially Christian schools have taken a stance of recognizing those people. It's interesting. Christianity has different perspectives in different countries. In Japan, Christianity tends to be progressive. Christianity is a part of pushing for international values and human rights and those things as a part of our tradition of accepting all people in Japan and promoting human rights in society. Christian schools were early in accepting transgender, intersex, LGBTQ people in our schools. So even in my school, we have accepted our faculty and staff who have come out as LGBTQ. We have students, and we try to accept them and help them and support them. Within Christianity, Christianity is a very, very small minority in Japan. Only 1% of the population is Christian. In that small minority in Japan, there's a diversity of opinion about LGBTQ issues. But in Christian schools, which are much bigger than Christianity, 10% of all colleges in Japan are Christian colleges. And in that 10% of colleges in Japan and schools in Japan, we have been very progressive in welcoming and affirming LGBTQ students, faculty, and staff, because just as our previous speakers spoke about from the Philippines, we've come to the position that all of our students, faculty, and staff have dignity. They're all loved. They're all important and worthy. And whatever struggles they have, we want to help them and support them in that. So there's a lot of challenges, legal challenges that LGBTQ people face in Japan, but there's also some progress, slow progress on the legal issues. And I would say that the other very interesting thing about Japan is recent studies have shown that approximately 9% of Japanese population identify as one of the parts of LGBTQ if you ask people in surveys, do you identify with one of those things? It turns out that 9% of Japanese people identify with at least one of those positions themselves. It's not talked about. People are very reluctant, and Japanese society tends to be very private and doesn't share and talk about these things. So people don't notice that it's there. But when we do the large studies of population, we discover that actually 9% of Japanese people themselves personally identify as a sexual minority. And schools, the Christian schools especially, have recognized this, and we think we should support those people and try to help them. So that's a quick review of the issues in Japan, and especially the perspective of the Christian schools.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Thank you very much. And it is good to know about the commonalities and some differences amongst our societies. So next, I would like to invite Dr. Pak, our dynamic lead hub director from Korea, to bring some report from Korea. So Dr.
Thank you for
Yang
the, okay, thank you for the opportunity. I will make it as short as possible, okay? And I have some screen, and let me share this one with you. Okay, so I'm trying to make the one general report about the South Korea about the issue of gender and sexuality. I'm trying to be more focused on the statistics, you know, what's going on in Korea. And some people already shared about what is the index ranking, and that is the famous one over here. So let me share that one, the Global Gender Gap Index in 2020. Based on it, the Korea has been ranked 101. In comparison, the Philippines was ranked in 16th. So that means that says a lot, okay? And lots of people have the different opinion because, you know, is that really reflect the gender gap, you know, correctly? And but I think, you know, it is showing, you know, general position of South Korea right now. Although South Korea has been developed country and open for many different things, but in terms of this gender and sexuality issue, and we are not that advanced, you know, to admit. Actually, I was checking some other objective index about this thing, and what I found out is the most accurate thing is by ILGA, the Europe, the Human Rights LGBTQI Index. And they call this one as a rainbow index, but that is only available in Europe. And which is showing this way. This is 2020 report, and the more green means, you know, more open for this gender inequality, and the red is not that way. So you can see, you know, what kind of country in Europe has been this way. if I, some research in Korea, and they put the Korean position based on their index, and the report says like this, and South Korea is only 11% out of the 100%, which is perfectly fair. Okay, read those people. If we are going back, okay, and that is, if you can see, the Norway and UK is around 70%, and the Russia and Turkey is under 10%. So we can see where the Korea stands for. What's going on in Korea is pretty similar to Japan and a little bit different. The Korea has been very reluctant about this issue of LGBTQI+. And because of very strong Confucian tradition, they had. So, they never talked about it. And based on the law, it is very not reflected and accepted. So this is the very interesting thing going on in 2019, the June. There was the place we call the Seoul Square Park. Usually when the big gathering comes, and then, it happened over there. And as you can see, there was the big Q festival. A lot of people were there, but at the same time, on the same place, there was the anti-Q festival. So they were fighting sometimes, but the most of anti-Q festival in Korea was supported by conservative Christians. And in Korea, there are 30% of the Christians from the population. But that has been changed a little bit. And the recent change, reflect like this one. And there was some survey by Korean Gallup, and happened 2021 in May. And they were asking about your opinion about same-sex marriage. Do we have to accept it or not? Of course, it was not legalized in any place in Korea. But as you can see, from 2001, the say no answer was 67%, and it was dropping down to 52%. And from 70% to 38%, we need to accept the same-sex marriage. If we compare this one, interestingly, by age, this is the one. If we are limiting ourselves into under 29 years old, in 2001, only 26% of the people within that age group, under 29, said we need to support the same-sex marriage. But in 2021, 73% of young generation are supporting we need to allow this same-sex marriage. Another interesting thing is the question, can we accept relationship among LGBTQIA+ people as love? And as you can see, current understanding was under 29 said the 86% of them said, yes, we need to regard that one as a love between people. Only 27% of the over 60 years old says we need to accept it. So that is the reality going on right now. And also they were asking this discrimination issue. And they were asking somebody can be fired because they are LGBTQIA+. And the 2021, the issue, this is total, the spanning all the generations. And 81% of the people say no, they cannot be fired because of their sexual identity. And only 12% of people said yes. So this is the change of the trend in Korea. One of the legal action is taking, going on in Korea, which is very controversial right now, is they are trying to pass the holistic anti-discrimination law. And actually the hot potato part is about the LGBTQI people included within this law. Somebody present that one to the Congress in 2006 and has been delayed and delayed until today. And actually, based on the people's opinion, and there are the 73% of people in Korea say we need to pass this law to protect all the people in Korea. But still, in discussion in the Congress, because there are very strong against opinion about this law, mainly from the conservative Christian people. So that is the reality, going on in Korea. And there are a lot of the future, we need to, make on and try to do it. So this is the little report from Korea, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yangmin. Now, before we go over to the question and answer session, I would like to say something about my country. I come from India, and talking about the global gender gap index. So I am very sorry to say that we are 140th out of 156 countries. So that is the state of affairs. When all over the globe, people are talking and they are, pondering about LGBTQ. Here in India, we are still struggling with the two sexes, male and female. And the sex ratio between male and female is 934 females per 100 males, which is alarming, though it has improved in the recent decades, but it is still alarming. And the main reasons are because of the discrimination and that female feticide and female infanticide, it still exists. And the case was not the same in the ancient India, but it only after the invasion of the Mughals, this thing started. And then in the colonial era again, because in the ancient Indian history, we see that women and men were treated equally. But then this happened, and now I'm happy to say that things are improving. And on 6 September 2018, a 5-judge constitutional bench of Supreme Court of India invalidated part of the section 377 of Indian Penal Code, making homosexuality legal in India. So it is something like we say that we are progressing, but there is still a lot of intolerance and social inequality for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer people and their identities. And India is also amongst the countries where there is an element of the third gender. It also exists. And I'm just sharing the data on which was conducted by a multinational research firm, IPSOS. It released a report on LGBT. And according to this report, it shows that 3% of Indian population, they identify themselves as homosexuals, this 3%, including gay and lesbian. 9% identified themselves as bisexual, 1% as pansexual, and 2% as asexual. So if in totality, 17% identified as not heterosexual. And as we say that India is like you see two different kind of India. Like one is the rural India, non-metro India, and one is the metro India. So accordingly, the acceptability of LGBTQ is also different in both the places. Metro they are more liberalized and they are more tolerant towards such things. And more of the gender and sexuality we will be discussing in the next APAMEI forum, wherein we have one expert from India coming and talking to us. So this is all about India that I wanted to share with you. Now, it is the time for Q&A session. I can see that people are actually, they are very much speechless, because these are the terms, like as told by our speakers also, that these are the terms we generally don't use in our everyday life. If I talk about in India, the colleges, in my college especially, it is all girls college, and apparently it seems everything is fine. Like I still see a girl or two, I can see from their look that they relate themselves and they identify themselves as males, but there are no issues as such. So I will, from the chat box, I can see there is a question. from Bill Bai. Adolescent pregnancies is a problem in the Philippines. Many girls face considerable pressure to marry in the early age and become mothers while they are still a child. Should our government take certain actions into it? So I think this question is open to any one of our speakers.
Hello, good afternoon. Okay.
Good
So, in regards to the question about adolescent pregnancies in the Philippines, okay, when I was affiliated with local government of Pasig City, okay, that is one of the cities in Metro Manila. The Pasig City actually has this introduction of better understanding, supposedly in the school, you know, the adolescents' body parts, so that it will not be like illicit or uncommon to younger populations of the Philippines. And as a matter of fact, when I was connected with local government of Pasig City, we had these several seminars. We conducted several talks about teenage pregnancy, the status of teenage pregnancy in the Philippines, not only in Pasig City. Yes, I agree. It is really, really alarming in the Philippines. So the government's still looking into the root cause, what is really the issue. But the only thing that I actually experienced on my end, awareness. We, raise awareness about teenage pregnancy, what could be the advantages, and how it can actually, provide hindrances on their future. So that is the only thing that we can do at the moment in Pasig City. So in my own knowledge, I do not have any law. I don't know any law yet, when it comes to addressing the adolescent pregnancies in the Philippines. So that's my take for a moment.
Thank you. We have a question from Priya Tripathi.
Sorry. Hi.
How can
may I
we-
quickly share
Sorry.
my may I quickly share my thoughts on that? I completely agree with my colleague here. It is also that we do not have sex education integrated into our curriculum. We have an alarming statistic in terms of sexual debut in the Philippines. We have it at, I think, at the age 12. Sexual debut in the Philippines is pegged at 12 years old. And many child's rights advocates attribute it to the fact that we do not have a comprehensive and solid sexual education curriculum in place in our educational system, as compared to more advanced countries, for instance, like Sweden and the EU member countries. Their sexual debut age is at 18 years old. So just because they have a very solid sexual sexual awareness curriculum at the onset, at the very early age. So I think that's one of the limitations that we have, and therefore it breeds that kind of result in the Philippine society. Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Masi, can we invite? Thank you, Kakay, for that. Dr. Masi, can we invite one from China to say something about the issue? Yun Han.
Yes, Dr. Miranda.
Please, you have the floor.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm a Chinese student, and I'd like to share some of my opinions about this topic. And actually, there are two parts that I'd like to share. First part is but all of those things actually is just my opinion. I am not hardly to say that I would be the one to represent all the Chinese in this volume, and especially, I see a lot of students, my schoolmates that actually also enjoying this volume. The first part that I want to share is because the human nature that create the female and the male, actually we have different needs, and that's I believe that male is trying to expand that our gene to find as many as mates from our natural, and for female is to find the most quality, the best that male to be their partner and to breed their future kids. And because of the modern society and the change of the equal between the female and the male, that female is standing for a very important role to the contribution to the society, and the female is already in China. I'd say the female is already in control of the choice of sex, and this is a big step for the beginning. And I believe when the women has the choice of which is having a baby or not, which is pregnant, that will change, become the biggest change to the society distribution of our job. And by that time, women supposed to be more powerful and standing a more important role to the contribution of our nation, because women, I believe that is become more calm, and somehow their working ability are better than men in most of the scenario. Okay, so second thing is the change of the LGBTQ situation in China actually is big. That from my idea, my opinion is for my father's generation, my father is still believe that the LGBTQ, that they have brain damage. If they think in that way, the male like male, that's crazy. But for the young generation, especially like the people born after 1970s, 1980s, that is getting more and more accepted to the LGBTQ society, and or rely on the expanding of the social media, that especially like TikTok actually come from China, and also that the Bilibili, some video platform with short videos. I believe that I've seen a lot of LGBTQ, they are willing to share their life and share what they are facing, what is their lifestyle to the others in the social media, and they are widely being accepted in China for their life, and the people are giving very good greetings, a very positive, comments about their life, especially, to females, they share their life together every day, and to males, they share as well, that they're being very widely accepted. And unlike before, people are just hiding themselves. They are not telling the others that, yeah, I'm LGBT. Now they are able to come out the closet and telling the others, actually we are, and this is the life we have. And the first time I've been deeply to understand, I know this group of people for a long time, of course, but for the first time I know this group of people from the Chinese media, actually is from the podcast. I've listened to a podcast that topics is all about the LGBTQ lives, and they will invite the host, and invite the others to join and share their lifestyles to the life stories to the others. So in China, I personally met a lot of LGBTQ people, mostly just a lesbian, the gays. And I think their life has no different to us. And of course, in China, we are not put this into the the decision-making step. We are not yet go to discuss it in from the government. But I believe someday that because the young generation will grow and will take the main role of the nation. So by that time, that could be a very big change to the understanding of the culture that we have. Thank you. That's all I want to share.
Thank you so much, Yunhan. Now, thank you for giving your opinion about what's the perspective in China. Now, there is a question for both the speakers, like how can, it is from Priya Tripathi from India, how can we overcome problem of marginalization and social exclusion of LGBT? In India, India have a homophobia.
Raphael, did you want to go? Hi, sorry, did you want Can you repeat the question?
Priya Tripathi.
How can we overcome problem of marginalization and social exclusion of LGBT in India? We have homophobia, right? Of course, there is a whole comprehensive answer to that, and we've likely discussed it. Me and my co-speaker discussed it. We can do legislation, changes in education, media representation, economic and labor changes. But all in all, let me just zero in on the word that was used, homophobia. Phobia is in fact an irrational fear. Okay, it's an irrational fear. That's a psychological term. Anything like hydrophobia, agoraphobia, it's an irrational fear of something. Is an irrational fear of homosexuals. And our basic problem is that many institutions, including the church, more especially the church, in the context of the Philippines, Chrissy, okay, in the Philippines, we have a statistic of 87% professing Christians of 110 million people. So that's a lot of people, okay? And many of these institutions, like the churches and the conservative sects and educational sects, tend to rationalize an irrational fear by using scriptural interpretations and the way they unpack or discourse, wherein what is supposedly irrational becomes rational. And we have institutions responsible for that. And it includes the institution to which I belong, which is the church sector. So yeah, that's my, so how do you combat? We change, we dismantle the rationalization of these phobias in many ways.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and in addition as well, okay, this is just so simple if we are going to say it, but doing it, it will like decades, you know, maybe 100 years, okay? But then government and people definitely should create first a non-homophobic society. And that is through legislation and education. So like people should look other people on their contribution in the society rather than labeling them that they are what you call gay, they are lesbian, and they are different. But then we need to look at those people or anybody on how they contribute for the goodness or for the betterment of that society. That is how we should think of other people. But then if you are going to think that we are homophobic, we are actually judging the people on their appearance, and because of that judgment, we actually curtail to maximize their potential, how they can be a good citizen. So that is my take on that question as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could I say a word about this question as well? I find it actually a very interesting question because the problem of marginalization and social exclusion of LGBTQI people happens all over the world. It happens in every country, and it happens in Japan. You know, it's just a matter of degrees. You know, for example, in Japan, about 70% of the people in the country agree with supporting rights for LGBT people, but 20% are against supporting rights for LGBTQ people. So we still have, you know, 20% of the population who are causing the problem of marginalization and social exclusion in Japan. And, you know, every country has a different percentage, but the problem is all over the world. And so I think, as our two other speakers both mentioned, listening to them made me think that education and schools can have a very big impact. We cannot change laws directly, but we can educate the next student, the next generation, so that they can understand, so that they can know that what is LGBTQI, what does it mean, where does it come from? It's not something to be afraid of. And if we do good education, part of it sex education, part of it human rights education, then I think that we can overcome some of those problems in the long term. Just my perspective on that.
Thank you, Dr. Paul Shu. And before I invite Dr. Youngmin Pak for his, his sharing of what is going to be the programs in the forum, I will take this last one question. That this is by Shroon Floors, in the Philippines, where LGBTQIA is accepted with their stand of being what they are, question is what generic name should they be called or addressed rather than she, he, or Mr. to avoid misunderstanding, for them to feel that they are accepted. So this is going to be the last question of today's forum. I also found it interesting, so I couldn't ignore this and wrap it up. So over to the speakers, and then I request Dr. Youngmin Pak to take over. Thank you.
Ikaw na?
Okay, anyway, anyway, this is somehow how we can consider that this is also a very nice question, because once you are being addressed appropriately, it actually boosts your self-confidence as well. Yes, I understand. But then we need to go back to the definition of being a woman or a man, or being male or female. But then I think not only the Philippines puzzled for how we should better address this community. Okay, so I think at the moment the most important thing that we need to do is, culturally adopt and recognize these people legally, their rights first. Okay, for me, that is my take, regardless of gender. Okay, and we will leave it to the lawmakers how we should address these people, I think. But then maybe hopefully by the community itself can create something how to address these people so that it can help them as well grow and then contribute better to the society, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes. I think the question is also a question on pronouns, if I'm not mistaken. I think this is also a question on pronouns. The basic rule of thumb is actually to ask. To ask, right? So I put my name here, Kakay Pamaran, UTSPH, she and her, which indicates that my pronouns are she and her. Pronouns, the English language, very particular to the English language, is a gender identifier. And therefore, pronouns will have to be connected to a person's gender identity, right? So if a person identifies as either a cisgender, transgender man or woman, they will be able to articulate, and depending on how evolved they are in their identity and how the depth of understanding of their identity, they will be able to communicate this to you. So the general rule of thumb is to ask, right? If you feel that this is, it's a feeling thing right now. So unfortunately, you have to be very aware of the person that you're talking to. It's not much of a problem if you speak in Tagalog, because our pronouns are non-gendered. You just say siya, sila, ako, ikaw, which is it does not have any gender. So the safest way to go about it, I found, whenever I'm in a conference or in a space where it's such a gender diverse space, I usually just speak in the vernacular in Tagalog to refer to them, or use their first names until you are comfortable enough to ask what are your chosen pronouns or something like that. For LGBT persons, it might help if you're sensitive to pronouns to indicate it upfront, right? The way I did my I just said she and her. So you can call me and refer to me in the feminine pronouns. I hope I answered your question. So there's no blanket answer to this. This is a more personal thing. It's a feeling thing, and it is also based on mutual respect and understanding in a shared space. Thank you.
Dr. Youngmin?
Okay, so yes, I'm trying to give the announcement. So first of all, I want to give the big thanks, to the wonderful speakers and the organizers and all the participants. So let us give our thanks, to everyone. Thank you. So I just want to announce the next APAMEI monthly forum. So we are having the monthly forum every last Saturday of the month. Okay, so it's gonna be the November 27th. We're gonna have it at the same time. Okay, it'll be different by the country, and we are using the same link all the time. So you don't need to look for the link, and it'll be same every time. Okay, from now on, the issue, as you can see, the background, the screen, and it'll be the education and the woman's right. So some people, speaker from India, will talk about the woman's right, and that'll be great opportunity for us to check out. Okay, so I'm asking all of you, please stay safe in the COVID-19 pandemic, and we will see each other next month with the grateful heart and very happy face again. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Rafael.
Thank you so much for the speakers from the Philippines. You were both wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Time is not enough.
Hello, bye.
Yes. The energy levels are high, but and I like it. Thank you, speakers. Wonderful.
Thank you as well for inviting us. Okay. Stay safe, everyone.